Justin Trudeau, the uber globalist. I'm Brian Lilly with the Rebel.media. It's interesting to look at some of the many distinctions between Justin Trudeau, our Canadian Prime Minister, and U.S. President Donald Trump. I mean, there are many. But on one specific front, I want to point to a huge difference. Donald Trump has been saying for some time now, he's not president of the world. He's the president of the United States of America, and America comes first. Now, Justin Trudeau is deciding that Canada comes second to the global superbody, the global government, if you will, of the United Nations. While most of official Ottawa is focused on the fact that Trudeau and his Liberals are going to bring in their pot legalization legislation this week, I'm looking elsewhere. Not a big surprise. They've just tabled a bill. Let me point it to you. It's from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, not the Minister of Public Safety or the Minister of Justice. It's from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and it's titled, Bill entitled An Act to Amend the Export and Import Permits Act and the Criminal Code, amendments permitting the ascension of the Arms Trade Treaty and other amendments. This is going to adjust Canada's criminal code. This is going to adjust Canada's Firearms Act. All of this, but it's done by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Why? Because it is putting United Nations law into Canadian law. And in doing so, you know what they're going to be doing? They're going to be putting the United States ahead of Canada's Parliament. This is not an overreach. This is not an exaggeration. This United Nations Arms Trade Treaty is supposed to be about keeping small arms, rifles, munitions and such out of the hands of terrorists or warlords, that sort of thing. It's a noble idea, but Canada's current import and export permit system already does that. What this law does is make sure that UN goals and UN objectives go above Canadian ones. And in the future, this UN treaty can be amended by 75% of the signatories changing it. Even if Canada says no, it changes. And because of the way this act is going to be written, the way this act is going to be passed, the United Nations will have a say on Canadian domestic law. Does that make sense to you? It doesn't to me, but it does to Trudeau, because he is someone who puts the United Nations above all. Despite claims to the contrary, Stephen Harper and the Conservatives didn't abandon the United Nations while they were in power, but they made the UN take a back seat to other multilateral organizations such as NATO, the G7, the G20, organizations that were about democratic countries rather than giving a say to Robert Mugabe's Zimbabwe, for example. Justin Trudeau wants to put the UN above all else. He wants to make sure that Canada wins back its seat at the UN Security Council. They've already launched a campaign, and as you can see from this document here, they've spent $500,000 already. Now that includes $70,000 on hospitality, $310,000 on shared services, but it doesn't include the pay for the 10 people that are working full-time on this. That's right, we've got 10 people. Now, we don't know their exact salaries, but I can give you some examples of where their salaries might fit in. We've got one person at the EX pay scale. That's EX02. That's Ottawa talk for an executive excluded from the collective bargaining agreement. What's their pay scale? $119,000 to $140,000. We've got one person at the FS4, that's Foreign Service 4, $105,000 to $123,000. We've got someone at the FS3, $86,000 to $109,000, 4 people at the FS2 pay scale of $72,000 to $98,000, and then we've got some people in New York. I'm not exactly sure what their salaries are because it's done by local pay scales as well. You've got to live in New York, you need to be paid to be able to afford to live in New York. So $500,000 before these salaries, which are probably reaching much higher than the $500,000 mark, and we are a couple of years away from the vote even happening. We are not even close to that. So we're going to be spending millions on Justin Trudeau having his wish of Canada having a seat at the UN Security Council. The same UN Security Council that can't agree on anything, such as stopping the fighting in South Sudan, stopping the fighting in Syria, dealing with ISIS. They can't decide on it because the Russians and Chinese have a veto, as do the Americans, the Brits, the French. All of these people can shut things down, and that's what regularly happens. So the UN has become, and has been for some time, a useless organization. But Trudeau desperately wants a seat at the table because to him, the UN is the be-all and end-all. It's why we started refunding UNRWA, the United Relief and Works Agency. This is the organization that's supposed to set up schools and hospitals for Palestinian refugees in Jordan and Lebanon, in the West Bank, in the Gaza Strip. They have been, well, linked to terrorism. They have been shown to be supporters of Hamas. They have been shown to be supporters of the intifadas, the knife attacks on Israelis inside Israel itself. Doesn't matter to Justin Trudeau. He gave them $25 million and said they're going to monitor to make sure they're neutral. As UN Watch just recently reported, that was months and months ago, and still people posting photos such as this one, showing support for the knife attacks, showing that teachers in the schools support Hitler, that they support the attacks by Hamas. All of this going on doesn't matter to Justin Trudeau, just like it doesn't matter where our peacekeeping troops go. We're going to send our Canadian Armed Forces into harm's way, into a UN peacekeeping operation, likely in Mali, an operation that is extremely dangerous, that shows no sign of ending, that shows no sign of actually keeping the peace. But we could lose a lot of troops there. That's fine with Justin Trudeau, as long as he gets his seat. This is a man that has put the UN, as I said, at the center of Canada's foreign policy. He takes regular junkets down to New York to go and have meetings with UN officials. He's had meetings with George Soros about Canada participating in more globalist ideas, including on mass migration. All of this so Trudeau can get his seat and claim that Canada's back on the world stage. Canada never left the world stage, but it wasn't the world stage that Justin Trudeau wanted to play on. He wanted to play on the globalist, leftist world stage that is the UN. And he's going to use your money to do it, and he's going to give up your sovereignty in order to make it happen. Shame on him. If you like the Rebel video you just watched, make sure you never miss a Rebel video again. Click here to subscribe. And if you haven't subscribed to our Rebel Canada channel yet, make sure you do that.